The Galactic Council chamber was alive with the murmurs of 1,000 voices, each one carrying the weight of their species' fears and ambitions. Representatives from across the stars had gathered, their glowing datapads displaying the same disturbing news. For thousands of years, the galaxy had been at peace, its power balanced between great empires. But that balance had just been shaken. A distress signal had arrived from the farthest edges of the known galaxy. It was fragmented, filled with static, but one phrase had survived the interference. "They have returned." The room fell silent as the council leader, a towering reptilian figure known as High Chancellor Vork, tapped his claws against the metal podium. "We need answers," he growled, his voice like grinding stone. "Humanity was wiped from existence 5,000 years ago. This must be some kind of mistake." The council's head of intelligence, a pale-skinned insectoid named Tilvez, stepped forward, her many eyes blinking in rapid succession. "It is no mistake," she said, her voice a clicking whisper. "Our deep space scanners confirm it. Unknown ships have been detected near the ruins of old human colonies. They are unlike anything we have seen before. No signals, no identification codes. Just watching." A cold shiver ran through the room. The memory of humanity was ancient, spoken of only in legends. They had once been a rising power, fierce and unpredictable. Then, without warning, they had vanished, leaving behind only abandoned worlds and silent battlefields. Many believed they had been destroyed in a war with an unknown enemy. Others thought they had simply collapsed, victims of their own aggression. But no one had ever imagined they would return. Vork let out a deep breath. "We need confirmation. Send a fleet. A small one. If these truly are remnants of humanity, they will either flee or make contact." The order was given, and within hours, a fleet of 20 scout ships, belonging to the mighty Zorth Dominion, was launched toward the last known location of the mysterious vessels. The Zorth were the strongest military force in the galaxy, their warships unmatched in firepower and technology. If these humans were truly back, the Dominion would put them in their place. Days passed, and the fleet reached the coordinates. What they found was nothing. Empty space, dark and cold. No ships, no stations, no signs of life. They sent out scanning drones, spreading them across the system. Minutes turned to hours, and frustration grew among the fleet commanders. Then, without warning, one of the ships went dark. No explosion, no distress call, just silence. Panic spread through the fleet as another ship vanished, and then another. The remaining ships sent out desperate transmissions. "We are not alone. Something is here. We can't see them." The message was cut short. By the time the command ship realized what was happening, it was too late. The stars around them flickered as shapes emerged from the void. Massive, towering vessels, their black hulls absorbing all light. Their design was nothing like the old human ships recorded in history. These were something new, something terrifying. The Zorth fleet opened fire, their plasma cannons lighting up the darkness. But the enemy ships did not move. The shots simply disappeared, as if the weapons themselves refused to function in their presence. The Zorth officers barely had time to comprehend what was happening before the first of their ships crumpled like paper, crushed by an unseen force. The last remaining ship tried to flee, its engines burning at full power. But before it could jump to hyperspace, a single transmission was sent to them from the unknown fleet. The voice was calm, emotionless, yet filled with an authority that sent terror into the hearts of those who heard it. "You are trespassing in our domain. Leave." The Zorth ship escaped, its crew shaking with fear. They had expected a forgotten enemy, a broken remnant of the past. But what they had found was something far worse. Back at the Galactic Council, High Chancellor Vork received the report. His claws trembled as he played the final transmission on the chamber speakers. The voice echoed through the hall, chilling the air. "You are trespassing in our domain. Leave." Silence filled the chamber as realization dawned. Humanity had not perished. They had been waiting. The message spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Every empire, every colony, every outpost with a communications relay received the same chilling transmission. Humanity has returned. We are watching. There were no demands, no threats, just a simple statement that sent entire civilizations into chaos. The Zorth Dominion, once the most powerful military force in the known galaxy, had been erased. Their fleets were gone. Their homeworld, silent. No one knew what had happened to them, whether they had been destroyed, taken, or simply vanished like the humans once had. The Galactic Council held an emergency summit, the first in over 1,000 years. Representatives of every major species gathered, their faces tense with fear. Even the Vrake Imperium, longtime rivals of the Zorth, did not celebrate their downfall. If the Dominion could be wiped out without resistance, what chance did anyone else have? High Chancellor Vorik stood at the center of the chamber, his reptilian eyes scanning the terrified crowd. He had ruled for nearly 2 centuries, guiding the council through war and peace alike. But nothing in his lifetime had prepared him for this. The situation is clear, Vorik said, his voice steady despite the rising panic around him. Humanity has returned, but they are not the same species we once knew. They are not allies. They are not conquerors. They are something else. Auxiliary diplomat, his translucent blue skin shimmering under the chamber's lights, spoke up. We cannot afford to assume their intentions. We must act. If we wait for them to make the first move, we may not have a chance to respond. A wave of agreement swept through the room, but others remained silent, afraid. It was the Ralthus ambassador, a pale, 4-armed being with dark, pupil-less eyes, who finally said what no one else dared to. What if there is no response to give? The Zorth fired every weapon they had, and nothing happened. Their fleets were crushed as if the universe itself had turned against them. The ambassador leaned forward. Tell me, Chancellor, what war can we fight against something that does not obey the laws of war? The chamber fell into uneasy silence. Then the lights flickered. Every screen, every data pad, every holo display in the chamber shut off at once. The air grew cold, and a deep, unnatural hum filled the hall. Some delegates gasped. Others stood frozen in place. And then, a voice. It did not come from speakers or devices. It came from everywhere. A voice that was neither loud nor quiet, neither male nor female, neither organic nor artificial. Do not resist. The entire chamber trembled. Some delegates collapsed to their knees. Others screamed. The message was not just heard, it was felt, pressing into their very minds like a cold hand gripping their thoughts. Vorik clenched his fists, forcing himself to speak. What do you want? There was no response. Then, as suddenly as it had come, the presence was gone. The lights flickered back on. Holo displays rebooted. The chamber was silent, the air thick with fear. The delegates looked at each other in horror. No one spoke for a long moment. Then, the auxiliary diplomat whispered what they were all thinking. They could have killed us all, and they didn't. Vorik swallowed hard. Not yet. The escape ship from the Zorth Dominion's fleet arrived at the nearest military outpost, its hull scared, and its crew shaken beyond reason. The commanding officers were dead, and those who survived spoke only in hushed, broken words. When the distress signal reached the Zorth High Command, it was clear that something had gone terribly wrong. The strongest fleet in the Dominion had been wiped out, not in battle, but in something far worse: silence. Within hours, the entire Galactic Council was informed. Meetings were called, strategies discussed, but no one had any answers. The Zorth Dominion demanded war, claiming humanity's return as an act of aggression. The smaller empires hesitated. A species that could erase an entire fleet without firing a single shot was not one to be taken lightly. Despite the warnings, the Zorth Dominion would not stand down. Their pride had been wounded, and they would not tolerate it. Within days, they assembled a new fleet, one 100 times larger than the first. Thousands of warships, the most powerful the galaxy had ever seen, gathered at the edge of Zorth space. This was not a scouting mission. It was an invasion. As the fleet approached the last known location of the human ships, tension ran through the ranks. Every officer remembered the reports. Every soldier had seen the faces of the survivors, faces filled with terror. But they were the Zorth Dominion, the greatest military force in the galaxy. Whatever humanity had become, they would crush them. The first hour passed with nothing but empty space. The warships spread out, scanning for any sign of the enemy. Then, just as before, it started. One ship went dark, then another. No explosions, no alarms, just silence. Panic spread as the fleet commanders barked orders, demanding status reports. But there were none. The ships were disappearing faster than they could react. Some officers tried to escape, ordering emergency jumps to hyperspace, but their engines failed before they could activate. It was as if space itself had turned against them. Then they saw them. The human fleet emerged like ghosts from the void, their ships vast and unrecognizable. No markings, no energy signatures, only darkness. It was not a fleet built for war. It was something beyond war, beyond reason. A transmission crackled through the fleet, overriding all communication systems. The voice was calm, emotionless. You were warned. Leave. The Zorth Dominion did not surrender. It was not in their nature. They opened fire with everything they had. Thousands of plasma cannons, nuclear warheads, energy beams, all unleashed at once. And yet, nothing happened. The weapons never reached their targets. Some flickered out of existence before impact, while others bent and twisted in impossible directions. Reality itself seemed to warp around the human ships. The Zorth commanders watched in horror as their greatest weapons failed them. Then, the retaliation began. The human ships did not fire missiles. They did not use lasers or plasma cannons. Instead, the Zorth warships simply began to break apart. Their hulls crumpled, metal bending as if crushed by an invisible hand. Some ships folded inward, vanishing into nothingness. Others were pulled apart in eerie, silent destruction. The flagship, a colossal dreadnought at the center of the fleet, sent one last desperate transmission back to the Dominion. They are not what we remember. They have changed. Then it, too, was gone. By the time the human fleet disappeared once more, the Zorth Armada had been completely erased. Not a single ship remained. When the Galactic Council received the news, the entire chamber fell into stunned silence. For the first time in history, the Zorth Dominion had been defeated without a war. Panic spread across the galaxy. If the strongest empire could fall so easily, what hope did the others have? And then, another message arrived. This time, it was directed to the entire Galactic Council. Humanity has returned. We are watching. You said. The panic spread far beyond the Galactic Council's chambers. Across every major empire, entire populations trembled at the realization that something far beyond their understanding had returned to the galaxy. Markets collapsed. Military fleets were placed on high alert. Conspiracy theories ran rampant. Some believed the humans had become gods. Others thought they were demons, back to punish the galaxy for its past sins. On the planet Tarsus Prime, a world once home to millions, an eerie silence had taken hold. It was the last known stronghold of the Zorth Dominion before they vanished. Now, it was a graveyard. The Galactic Council had sent a team of elite operatives to investigate. Soldiers, scientists, and diplomats, all armed with the best technology their species could offer. Their mission was simple: find out what happened to the Zorth. As the dropships landed, the team stepped out in full environmental suits. The air was breathable, the gravity normal, but there was something deeply wrong. No bodies, no destruction, no sign of war. The cities stood perfectly intact, untouched but empty. Skyscrapers stretched into the sky, lights still flickering in some buildings. Vehicles remained parked along the streets. Shops were stocked with goods, meals left half-eaten on tables. It was as if the entire planet had been abandoned in the middle of daily life. Commander Arian, a veteran of countless wars, gripped his rifle tightly as he stepped through the silent streets. "This isn't a war zone," he muttered. "This is something else." The team split up, scanning for life signs, energy readings, anything. But all they found was more silence. Then, the first soldier vanished. One moment, Lieutenant Varick was walking ahead of the squad. The next, he was simply gone. No sound, no struggle, just gone. The squad froze. Weapons were raised. Scanners flared to life, searching for any disturbance. Nothing. "Command, we've lost a man," Arian reported, his voice tense. No signs of attack. He just disappeared. Static. Command. More static. The team tried to retreat, moving back toward the dropships. But the ships were gone. Not destroyed. Not damaged. Gone. Panic set in. The team formed a defensive circle, breathing heavily as they realized the truth. They were never alone. The silence wasn't natural. It was a presence, a force watching them, studying them. Then, a whisper, not through comms, not through speakers, but in their own minds. A single, chilling phrase. "You do not belong here." One by one, the soldiers began to vanish. Some screamed. Others fired their weapons wildly into the air. It didn't matter. The silence swallowed them whole. Commander Arian was the last one standing. His hand shook as he fell to his knees, gripping his helmet, his breath ragged. "Please," he whispered, "what do you want?" The silence answered, "Leave." Then the world around him flickered, and he was back, not on Tarsus Prime, not even in the same sector. Arian woke up in the middle of deep space, floating alone in the void. His ship, his squad, the planet, all gone. And in the distance, barely visible among the stars, he saw them. The human fleet, watching, waiting. The entire galaxy reeled when Commander Arian was recovered. He had been found drifting in deep space, his suit's life support barely holding on. When he was finally conscious, the words he whispered sent chills through every high-ranking officer who heard them. "They sent me back. Every species, every empire, every warlord who once thought of humanity as nothing more than a long-forgotten race now feared them. They had erased the Zorth Dominion, silenced an entire world, and plucked a soldier out of reality itself, without firing a single shot." The Galactic Council convened once more, but this time, there was no arrogance, no debate about power. There was only one question left to ask. What did humanity want? But before they could answer that, before they could even send out a diplomatic probe, the message came. Not through radio waves, not through standard communication channels, directly into their minds. "You have forgotten us. We have not forgotten you." It was then that the Council realized this was never about war. It was never about conquest. It was about memory. For centuries, the galaxy had erased humanity's existence. No one spoke of them. No history books mentioned them. It was as if their entire civilization had been wiped away from records, as if they had never existed. And now, the forgotten had returned. Across the galaxy, entire fleets scrambled, some preparing for war, others seeking to surrender before a battle could even begin. But before anyone could act, the first human ships arrived. Not one, not 10. Thousands. Sleek, dark vessels, unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They did not bear the markings of the old human fleets. They had no insignias, no recognizable signatures. They were something new, something evolved. They appeared over the core worlds of every major empire, not attacking, not firing, but simply watching. The Galactic Council tried to communicate, sending out desperate pleas, messages of peace, of surrender, of negotiation. Only one response came back. A single image transmitted across every screen, every hologram, every datapad in existence. It was a picture of Earth, a world long thought to be nothing more than dust and ruins. But the image told another story. Earth was not dead. It was not abandoned. It had become something else, a fortress, a throne. And beneath the image, a final message appeared. We remember. The galaxy trembled, because now they could not forget. The galaxy stood frozen in fear. The return of humanity was not a declaration of war. It was a reminder, a silent, overwhelming force that loomed over every major empire, every species that had once dismissed them as a forgotten past. Panic spread like wildfire. Governments collapsed. Militaries hesitated. The Galactic Council, the so-called rulers of the stars, found themselves powerless. The human fleet did nothing but hover over their homeworlds, their intentions unreadable. And that was the most terrifying part. For days, no one moved. No one spoke. The silence stretched on, suffocating, until the humans finally broke it. A single ship descended onto the Galactic Council's homeworld. Not a warship, not an invasion force. Just one vessel. It landed in the center of the Council's grand chamber, a place where the most powerful beings in the universe once dictated the fate of lesser species. Now they stood trembling as the ship's doors slowly opened. A single figure stepped out. A human. No weapons, no armor. Just a single human, walking through the chamber with a quiet confidence that sent a cold wave of dread through the gathered rulers. The Council's Supreme Chancellor, an aged Drathian with 3 piercing eyes, tried to speak, but his voice cracked under the weight of the moment. "Whoa, what do you want?" The human stopped in the center of the chamber. He looked at the faces of those who once ruled without challenge, who had dictated which civilizations lived and died. Then he spoke. "You erased us." His voice was calm, but the weight behind it was immeasurable. The words were not an accusation. They were a fact. "Humanity once stood beside you," he continued. "We built, we traded, we learned. We called some of you allies. We even called some of you friends." A hush fell over the chamber. No one dared interrupt. And then the human said, his eyes cold and unreadable, "You turned on us." The words struck deeper than any weapon could. Some of the council members shifted uncomfortably. Others lowered their gaze in shame. They all knew the truth, buried beneath centuries of lies. Humanity had been a rising force. Too strong, too unpredictable, too dangerous. And so, they had been betrayed. The Drathian Chancellor swallowed hard. The records were rewritten. The human's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. "But we remember." A thick silence followed. No one knew what to say. What could they say? The truth had been spoken, and no lie could stand against it. Then the human took a slow step forward, and the council members flinched. "We did not come for war," he said. "We did not come to conquer." His gaze swept across the room, taking in their fear, their guilt. "We came to remind you of what you did." He let those words sink in before delivering the final blow. "You took everything from us, but we endured. We rebuilt. And now," he tilted his head slightly, "now we decide what happens next." The chamber was deathly silent. The galaxy held its breath. Because for the first time in history, the rulers of the stars were no longer in control. Humanity was. "You said." The silence in the Galactic Council's grand chamber was suffocating. No one dared to speak, to move, to even breathe too loudly. The human stood before them, unarmed, unarmored, yet more dangerous than an entire fleet. The weight of his words still hung in the air. "Now we decide what happens next." For centuries, the Council had ruled without question, bending lesser civilizations to their will, erasing threats before they could rise. But now, the forgotten had returned, stronger than ever. The Drathian Chancellor's throat was dry. his three eyes darting to his fellow council members. He saw the unspoken terror in their expressions. The humans had come back, not as conquerors, not as victims, but as something else entirely. As judges. What? What do you want from us? The Chancellor's voice cracked. The human let the question hang in the air for a moment, his gaze sweeping over the gathered rulers. That depends, he said, his voice eerily calm. On what? Another council member, a reptilian Valkyrie, hissed nervously. The human took a slow step forward, and every leader flinched. On whether you tell the truth. The council exchanged nervous glances. The truth. The real truth. It had been buried for generations, rewritten, distorted. The younger members of the council had grown up believing humanity had simply faded away, lost to time. But the elders knew better. The Drathian Chancellor's mandibles twitched. The records state. The records lie. The human's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. A hush fell over the room. The human continued, his tone measured but firm. We know what happened. We know how the council turned against us, how you feared what we might become. We know the fleets that burned our colonies, the assassins sent to silence our leaders. And when we would not break, you erased our very existence from history. The Valkyrie council member bared his fangs, an instinctive reaction to fear. If you know all this, he hissed, then why are we still alive? The human regarded him for a long moment. Then he smiled, and that, more than anything, sent pure terror through the council. Because we are not like you. His voice was quiet but filled with something deeper than anger. Conviction. We do not erase those who stand in our way. We do not kill out of fear. That is what makes us different. Some of the younger council members exhaled in relief, believing humanity had come for peace. Then the human's expression darkened. But do not mistake our patience for weakness. The tension in the chamber thickened. The human took another step forward, his presence alone more powerful than any fleet. You have one chance, he said. One chance to make this right. The Drathian Chancellor hesitated. And if we refuse? For the first time, the human's smile faded. His eyes, deep and unwavering, met the Chancellor's. If you refuse, he said slowly, then we will show you what it truly means to be forgotten. The council chamber turned ice-cold, because, in that moment, every ruler in the galaxy understood the unspoken threat. Humanity had returned, and this time, nothing would stop them. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so silent. Every ruler, every warlord, every so-called sovereign of the stars sat frozen, staring at the human standing before them. A single human, yet carrying the weight of an entire species that had been wronged, betrayed, erased. And now, they had returned. The Drathian Chancellor tried to steady his voice. What does making it right look like to you? The human let the words settle in the air, as if testing their weight. Confession, he said. Acknowledgement. The truth, spoken before the galaxy. No more lies, no more rewriting history. You will tell every world what you did. A murmur spread through the council. For centuries, the story had been controlled. If they admitted the truth now, their power, their legitimacy would crumble. You cannot ask this of us. A Kordathi ambassador snarled, his forearms tightening in rage. It would tear the balance of the galaxy apart. The human's expression didn't change. Then perhaps it deserves to fall. A hush fell. The council had ruled the galaxy for millennia, dictating its future, bending lesser civilizations to their will. Never had anyone dared to challenge them like this. And if we agree? The Chancellor asked cautiously. The human's gaze was unreadable. Then humanity watches. We listen. We remember. And we decide if your words are enough. The unspoken weight behind that statement sent shivers through the council. The Drathian Chancellor exhaled slowly. He knew. They all knew. The humans could not be fought. Not anymore. The galaxy's mightiest fleets, its deadliest weapons, none of it would matter. Not against a force that had endured extinction and return stronger. The only way to survive was surrender. The Chancellor's mandibles tightened. "Very well," he said, though it nearly choked him. "We will reveal the truth." The human nodded once. No celebration, no satisfaction, just a quiet, calm acknowledgement, as if he had already known this outcome before the conversation had even begun. "But understand this," the human said, his voice even, unshaken. "This is not mercy. It is a warning. You will never touch us again. You will never threaten us again. You will never forget us again." The Vocary Council member shuddered, because he understood the deeper meaning. If the Council ever broke this fragile peace, if they ever tried to betray humanity again, it would be the last mistake they ever made. And with that, the human turned. Without another word, he walked back toward his ship, leaving the galaxy's rulers shaken, broken, exposed. As the doors closed behind him, the Council finally exhaled. They had survived this day. But for the first time in history, they no longer ruled the stars. Humanity did, and nothing could stop them now.